Jai Shri Ram. Paradoxes. A paradox is defined as something self-contradictory but true. A rich country full of poor people. We are all born geniuses, but most of us achieve nothing in life. We are living paradoxes. Irony is a related word. IRONY. Irony means a paradox plus humor plus sarcasm. If a fire engine catches fire, that is irony. Rakshakule bhakshakulayyaru. The dog is silent and the owner is barking and even biting. That is real irony. So, irony, ironical is the inflection. So, let's try to understand some paradoxes. There are lots of paradoxes. And I will try to read out and explain a few which will entertain us and will also give us insights into life. Okay. Excusable negligence. If a behavior is excusable, then it is not negligence. Excusable negligence. Nice phrase to use, isn't it? Excusable negligence. But the problem is, if the behavior is excusable, why are you calling it negligence? Okay. And Gödel's incompleteness theorems, I don't want to go into that now. Ignore all rules, that is the rule. But to obey this rule, it is necessary to ignore it. That is, ignore all rules is the rule. Okay. So next one, let us see. There are some really funny ones. Impossible objects, you will find lots of optical illusions are available. Optical illusions on Google, you can find impossible object. Okay. Intentionally blank page. Intentionally blank page. Many documents contain pages on which the text, this page is intentionally left blank, is printed, thereby making the page not blank. Okay. Intentionally. This page is intentionally left blank is printed on it. Therefore, that means it is not blank at all. Okay. Invalid proof. Invalid proof. What is this invalid proof? Apparently correct mathematical derivation that leads to an obvious contradiction. Okay. Anyway, the phrase is useful. Invalid proof. Logical fallacies, as you know, misconceptions resulting from incorrect reasoning. Incorrect reasoning in argumentation, the result is a misconception. That's called a logical fallacy. So many logical fallacies are there. Moral paradox. Yeah, this is a very interesting concept. You will find lots of moral paradoxes in Ramayana, Mahabharata and our Puranas. A moral paradox is a situation in which moral imperatives clash without a clear resolution. Moral imperatives. An imperative, categorical imperative. An imperative means an absolute moral law. Absolute moral law. In fact, an imperative sentence means a command. Stand up, sit down. That's called an imperative sentence. Categorical imperative is a concept promoted by Immanuel Kant. Absolute moral law. Of course, he gave it an interesting name in English, categorical imperative. That concept is already known to us. Our Vedas mention so many categorical imperatives. Ritam vadichyami. Ritam is a categorical imperative. Absolute moral law. You cannot break that law. You can only break yourself against that law. So, categorical imperative means absolute moral law. So, moral imperative. Moral paradox is a situation when moral imperatives clash without clear resolution. Take the example of Karna. Best example. Karna knew that he was on the side of adharma. Karna knew that Duryodhana was adharma personified. All the activities of Duryodhana were intended to harm Pandavas, and it was nothing but pure adharma. But because Karna vowed to dedicate his life for the service of Duryodhana, and if necessary die for that, so he continued to fight for Duryodhana. He was on the wrong side of the war. So, the moral conflict, the moral paradox is, should we give greater importance to our vows that we take, and should we give greater importance to the vow of friendship, or the greater importance should be given to dharma? What is more important, your dharma or your friend? See, there is an interesting situation in the war. While the battle is raging, Mahabharata, Satyaki, in one instance, so Bhurisravas and Satyaki, there is an incident where Satyaki actually was very tired after fighting several warriors, and he is coming to a different part of the battlefield, and then he is again challenged by Bhurisravas, and actually for a Kshatriya, once challenged, he should not turn down the challenge, so he fought. And Bhurisravas was the king of Bahlika, a minor kingdom, and Bhurisravas, I think, was the son of Bahlika, who was the elder brother of Shantanu. And so there is a generational rivalry and all that. There is a big backstory. Anyway, Bhurisrava was a powerful warrior. He was the head of one Akshohini. And Bhurisrava, in this particular instant, he defeated Satyaki. Satyaki is a very powerful warrior on par with Arjuna and Krishna. But like I said, Satyaki was already tired because he fought many other warriors, and he was moving towards another part of the battlefield for whatever reason. The details are different now. That's not important. So Satyaki accepted the challenge, and on the verge of being killed by Bhurisrava, Bhurisrava raised his hand to cut off Satyaki's head. And Krishna immediately told Arjuna, yes, cut off that fellow's hand. So Arjuna shot an arrow, cut off Bhurisrava's hand, the sword arm. The sword and the arm fell down, and immediately Satyaki picked up that sword and beheaded Bhurisrava. And everyone booed Satyaki because that was adharma. So now here is an instance. Arjuna himself was very troubled. He was feeling very remorseful because he did something instantly without thinking on the order of Sri Krishna. So Krishna told him, listen, Satyaki saved our life several times, and he is a friend. So saving a friend's life is important. And you cannot sit and wonder and speculate about what is dharma now. That is dharma. Saving your friend's life is dharma. So that is, Arjuna quickly followed the instruction, but later he felt very depressed because he thought he did something wrong. Of course, he resolved it. Later he felt it's all right because Krishna said it. Now you have a moral paradox. Krishna even tried to tell Karna that you should give up Duryodhana and join the Pandavas, because once you defect, because Krishna reveals the secret of Karna's birth to Karna, that listen, you are the eldest son of Kunti, and Krishna hoped that once this fellow knows this much, he will defect and he will join the Pandavas, and thus the war can be avoided. That was Krishna's plan. But Karna insisted, no, I know you will win because you are with Pandavas, Pandavas will win. Let them win. And I cannot abandon Duryodhana at this time, that too. That will be the worst kind of adharma. My dharma is now to defend him. So, friendship. So he decided that he will fight for his friend, though his friend was evil personified. So very interesting situations. That is called a moral paradox. Okay. Now, from quantum mechanics, you have a concept called observer's paradox. The outcome of an event or experiment is influenced by the presence of the observer. Observer's paradox. When you observe something, it will change. Right? So when you look at the moon, it is there, but when you don't look at it, it is not there. That Schrodinger's cat is also there. And then that uncertainty principle is also there, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You cannot measure the location and movement of a particle simultaneously. Observer paradox. The outcome of an experiment or event is influenced by the presence of the observer. Paradoxical laughter. Inappropriate laughter, which is sensed by the person who is laughing. I am laughing because I am reminded of the incident in Ramayana At the end of the Ramayana, everything is over and Rama is being coronated, Pattabhishekam. And the crown is being placed on Rama's head and the rituals are going on and chanting and all that is going on. And suddenly Lakshmana bursts out laughing loudly. And everything comes to a standstill. Everyone is wondering why is Lakshmana laughing. And including Rama, I believe they start introspecting. Maybe Lakshmana is laughing because of what I did some time ago. So Sita is worried, Rama is worried, everyone is worried, I believe. Even Hanuman is wondering. Maybe Lakshmana is reminded of some silly thing I did in the past and that's why he is laughing. And Lakshmana himself is wondering why he is laughing, because you know why he was laughing. Everyone is wondering. So Lakshmana realized that he is laughing because of a very peculiar situation. See, Lakshmana did not sleep for 14 years. And he pleaded with Nidra Devi to spare him and so that he could be vigilant all throughout the 14 years. He was never sleeping. He did not sleep. And the sleep was transferred to his wife Urmila Devi. She slept for all the 14 years. And now, as per the boon conferred by Nidra Devi, she said, once the 14 years are over, then you will have to sleep. Of course, you will have to start sleeping or whatever, something like that. I don't want to go into the details. So, now 14 years were over and the whole purpose of defeating Ravana, rescuing Sita Mata, all that is to install Rama as the king. And now when the ultimate, the Sammam Bonam, the highest good is Rama being coronated so that Ramarajyam can be established, at that point of time, when everything is aimed at actually culminating in this, which is Pattabhishekam of Rama, at that point of time, suddenly he is now likely to go into deep sleep because of Nidra Devi's boon or whatever. Now it is working like a curse. So Lakshmana is laughing because at the paradoxical situation. You see, after all, everything was done to ensure Rama sits on the throne, and when Rama is now sitting on the throne and the coronation is going on, if he goes to sleep, the whole purpose of this 14 years of struggle is wasted. And he starts laughing at the whole situation. Paradoxical laughter. Interesting, isn't it? The paradox of anti-Semitism. There was a book written by a very famous author, Dershowitz and Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre. They say that lack of external persecution and antagonisms will result in the dissolution of Jewish identity. So that means Jews must be subjected to persecution and antagonisms, otherwise they will lose their sense of identity. That is the paradox of anti-Semitism. I think the same thing is for Muslims also. The paradox of Islamophobia, or we'll give it a nice name, or if that is okay, it's all right. So unfortunately, they are always offended. If a Muslim is not offended for something, then perhaps he loses his identity. So they will be offended. Even if you do nothing. When we are building the Ram temple, people are getting offended. The court has given a judgment and there is sufficient evidence. Still you are offended. If not this, something else will offend you. They are permanently offended. So if you are not offended, perhaps you will lose your identity as a Muslim. So that is a new paradox I have discovered now. The paradox of Muslim identity. Unless offended, a Muslim might lose his sense of identity as a Muslim. There is an interesting paradox called Stapp's ironical paradox. Stapp must be the name of the person who thought it up. The universal aptitude for ineptitude makes every human accomplishment an incredible miracle. See, we will make mistakes because we are humans after all. So, and we have the universal aptitude for ineptitude. and therefore any accomplishment we achieve should be considered a miracle. Good one. This is called crocodile dilemma. I don't know who thought it up. It's interesting anyway. If a crocodile steals a child and promises to return it to the father, if the father can correctly guess what the crocodile will do, how should the crocodile respond in the case that the father guesses that the child will not be returned? Catch 22. Catch 22 situation, a situation where someone is in need of something that can only be had by not being in need of it. You need something and you can get it only if you don't need it. Okay, banks will give you a loan if you can prove and show that you don't need a loan. Okay, Catch 22 novel, you cannot leave the mission, the bombing mission. If you can leave only if you can prove that you are insane, and if somebody can prove that he is insane, that is mad, then he cannot be mad, because a madman cannot prove anything. So the conditions are such that you cannot escape. So that's a catch 22. So in life also it is always a catch 22 situation. If you are different, they will hate you because you are different, and if you are like them, they will hate you because you are like them. So it's always a catch 22 situation. Okay. Unexpected hanging paradox. The day of the hanging will be a surprise, so it cannot happen at all. So it will be a surprise. The surprise examination. Okay, isn't it? The day of the hanging will be a surprise, so it cannot happen at all. So it will be a surprise. The lecturer told the students that next week there is going to be a surprise test. The students reasoned. See, Sunday is a holiday. So Monday is the working day. So in case if the test is on Monday, that is immediately after the holiday, then it can't be called a surprise test, right? Because after the holiday, the first working day, if the test is there, then they eliminated Monday. So by the same logic, once Monday is eliminated, if the test is held on Tuesday, since Sunday was eliminated and Monday was also eliminated, because had the test been held on Monday, it wouldn't be a surprise. So Monday was eliminated and therefore Tuesday, and then if it had been held on Tuesday, then again it ceases to be a surprise test, because it is predictable again. So the same logic applies for all days of the week. And so the students concluded that there will be a test, but then it won't be a surprise test, or there will be no test because it can't be a surprise test. Finally, on Wednesday afternoon, the professor conducted the test and everyone kept quiet because it looked like a surprise test. Okay, this is another paradox of the quote. A law student agrees to pay his teacher after winning his first case. His law teacher then sues the student who has not yet won a case for payment. So, if the student wins, then the teacher loses and he gets paid. Anyway, the liar paradox. This sentence is false. This is the canonical self-referential paradox. Is the answer to this question no? And I am lying. It's a canonical self-referential paradox. This sentence is false. If the sentence is true, then it must be false. Moderation paradox. Moderation in all things, including moderation. Wow. Moderation in all things, including moderation. Russell's paradox is, does the set of all those sets that do not contain themselves contain itself? So, all the librarians were given a task to make a catalog list of all the books that are there. So, they created a book in which they started writing down all the names. Does this book, because it's a book, be listed in the catalog? If it is listed, then there is a problem, and if it is not listed, there is a problem. So, this kind of a weird problem. Russell's teapot is another interesting one. Russell's teapot. Russell said This is to ridicule religious dogmas, that there is a teapot orbiting the sun, and this teapot, small one teapot, is somewhere between Mars and Jupiter. And since that is there, that is why my God is, God. That's it. Or the teapot is God, or some crap like that. Go and find out. He says, go and find out. It's there. I know it's there. There's a teapot orbiting. And the Socratic paradox is, I know that I know nothing. I know that I know nothing at all. Now, the Sorite's paradox, also known as the paradox of the heap. See, one grain of sand is not a heap. One coin is not a heap of coins. One grain of sand. 2 grains of sand. You add one more 3. At what point of time do these grains become a heap? Can you identify? No. One hair cannot make the difference between being bald and not being bald. But then if you remove one hair at a time, you will never become bald. At what point of time and at what stage can a person be called bald? $1 will not make you rich. So if you keep this up, $1 at a time, you will never become rich, no matter how much you obtain. Friendship paradox. For almost everyone, their friends have more friends than they do. The Monty Hall paradox. Which door do you choose? There are 3 doors, and behind one door is a car. And the conductor of this program will open one door and show you a goat. Now there are 2 more doors. So if you ask one door to be opened correctly, then you will get the car. So does the probability decrease? Well, the answer is the probability doesn't decrease, it remains the same. Monty Hall problem, check up. You want to know more about this? Check it up. Hey, this is a very funny one. It's called the pigeonhole principle. I don't know why. There must be at least 2 people in Hyderabad with the same number of hairs on their heads. Oh, the original one is London. I don't know how we can ever check that. And this one is something I like, Zeno's paradox. You see, you can never reach point B from point A, because if from point A to point B you have to go, first you will go half the distance, and after you go half the distance that is there, of that you will have to go half the distance, and whatever remains of that you will have to go half the distance, and whatever remains of that you will have to go half the distance, whatever remains of that you will have to go half the distance. So you will have to go on going half the distance of whatever remains. Therefore you will never be able to go from point A to point B. Now this is a very interesting paradox, decision theory based. It's called Abilene paradox, Abilene. People can make decisions based not on what they actually want to do, but on what they think that other people want to do, with the result that everybody decides to do something that nobody really wants to do, but only what they thought that everybody else wanted to do. And Buridan's ass. This is another interesting one. How can a rational choice be made between 2 outcomes of equal value? So there was a donkey with a mound of hay and a mound of something else also nice to eat. So the donkey was unable to decide and starved to death. Green paradox is, policies intending to reduce future CO2 emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, may lead to increased emissions in the present. So choosing between unpalatable alternatives, that is zugzwang. I think in chess we have a catch-22 situation, zugzwang. Zugzwang means choosing between unpalatable alternatives. Anything you choose is bad, but still you have to choose. Hobson's choice, which is no choice. Newcomb's paradox, perhaps the name of the person who coined it or found it or thought up. How do you play a game against an omniscient opponent? If you are playing a game of chess against Krishna, because he is omniscient, so how can he play a game? Because he already knows what move you are going to make. How do you play? So life is a game. We are all playing, and he knows what move you are going to make. So that is why we surrender. We surrender totally. Sarvadharman parityajya. The paradox of hedonism. People pursue happiness but become miserable. But when somebody pursues something else, one achieves happiness. When one pursues happiness itself, one is miserable. But when pursues something else, one achieves happiness. That's a good one. Paradox of tolerance. Should we tolerate intolerance if intolerance would destroy the possibility of tolerance? That's a very good one. Should we tolerate intolerance if intolerance would destroy the possibility of tolerance? Very good one. Please write it down. This is what is happening in our country because of so many jihadis and even the other proselytizers. They are so intolerant and we are being asked to tolerate them. But if we go on tolerating this intolerance, maybe this tolerance of intolerance will one day destroy all possibility of tolerance. Should one tolerate intolerance if intolerance would destroy the possibility of tolerance? So the prisoner's dilemma, XY game, win as much as you can. That's a lovely game. Please ask me, we'll play that game. If we have some 15-20 people, it's a lovely team dynamics game. The prisoner's dilemma. Two people might not cooperate even if it is in both their best interest to do so. That's a nice one actually. Relevance paradox. Sometimes relevant information is not sought out because its relevance only becomes clear after the information is available, not before. Voters paradox. A group of separately rational individuals may have preferences that are irrational in the aggregate. True. Big problem in India. Irresistible force paradox. What would happen if an unstoppable force collides or hits an immovable object? What would happen if an unstoppable force hits an immovable object? Please answer. Unstoppable force collides with an immovable object. What will happen? Tea leaf paradox. When a cup of tea is stirred, the leaves assemble in the center even though centrifugal force pushes them outward. Strange, isn't it? Fermi paradox, the Italian, I think he got the Nobel Prize also. If there are, as probability would suggest, many other sentient species in the universe, probability suggests that there are there, then where are they? Should their presence be obvious? Fermi paradox. Heat death paradox. Since the universe is not infinitely old, it cannot be infinite in extent. Since the universe is not infinitely old, it cannot be infinite in extent. Yeah, true. Olbers paradox. Why is the night sky black if there is an infinity of stars? Why is the night sky black when there is an infinity of stars? Olbers paradox. In quantum mechanics, there are so many paradoxes. I don't want to get into that now. It's full of paradoxes. The famous one, Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox. Can faraway events influence each other in quantum mechanics? Bell's theorem disproved Einstein. Remember, Einstein admitted that he blundered and it was his biggest mistake when he said that nothing in the universe can move faster than speed of light. But Bell's theorem disproved him, because subatomic particles can have twins, and one of its twins may be in Jupiter and one right now here in this room, and you touch this, that fellow will spin or move instantly. That means the communication is instantaneous, which means the communication must have occurred faster than speed of light. That's a simple logical deduction. But then people came up with all kinds of other explanations. So anyway, there was a movie in Telugu, Hello Brother, and Judwa in Hindi. The original Hollywood movie was featuring Van Damme. There are twins, and if one fellow receives a punch, the other fellow in some other part of the world falls because he receives the punch also. Simultaneous, faster than speed of light. Communication. Hardy's paradox. How can we make inferences about past events that we haven't observed, while at the same time acknowledge that the act of observing it affects the reality we are inferring to? My God, awesome. I don't know whether you have understood it. Because the observer's paradox is there, then how can you make inferences about past events that we haven't observed, while at the same time acknowledging that the act of observing it affects the reality we are inferring? Now, Schrodinger's cat paradox, that's another quantum paradox. Is the cat alive or dead before we look? Oh my God, that's another very interesting one. And of course, the double slit experiment, the conclusion is that electrons seem to be knowing that they are under observation, which means dead matter or inanimate. That's why we Hindus, we believe that consciousness exists in everything. And the inescapable conclusion of the double slit experiment is that consciousness is the ultimate reality. Black hole information paradox. Black holes violate a commonly assumed tenet of science that information cannot be destroyed. The twin paradox. The theory of relativity predicts that a person making a round trip will return younger than his or her identical twin who stayed at home. Going to outer space and come back. The person who goes into space will return younger. That a time dilation and all that. In biology, there is a paradox of enrichment. Increasing the food available to an ecosystem may lead to instability and even to extinction. Same thing, I think that is why civilization, the fall of the Roman civilization, Hindu civilization also, we reached a certain peak and we became so wealthy and complacent and we were invaded. The Mughals, the Muslims invaded 800 years, they looted, slaughtered. The British came 200 years and it's continuing. That means we reached a certain level of sophistication and wealth and then decadence will set in. And after you become very, very strong, you become actually very weak and vulnerable. The French paradox. It is said that the French drink a lot and eat a lot of red meat, but the incidence of coronary heart disease is very less. That's called the French paradox. Glucose paradox. The large amount of glycogen in the liver cannot be explained by its small glucose absorption. The Gre's paradox, it is called. Despite their relatively small muscle mass, dolphins can swim at high speeds and obtain large accelerations. Muscle mass is very less. Mexican paradox. Mexican children tend to have higher birth weights than can be expected from their socio-economic status. Hispanic paradox. Hispanics in USA tend to have substantially better health than the average population in spite of what their aggregate socio-economic indicators predict. The pesticide paradox. The paradox of the pesticides. Applying pesticides to a pest may increase the pest's abundance. So human pests are also there. Applying pesticide to the pest may increase the pest's abundance. Peto's paradox, interesting name, maybe the researcher's name. Humans get cancer with higher frequency than large mammals. For example, a whale, the very large mammal, but they don't get. If cancer is essentially a negative outcome lottery at the cell level, cancer is a negative outcome lottery at the cell level, then a whale which has billions of more cells should be potentially more cancerous. It should have potentially cancerous cell divisions. Then you would expect whales to have to be predisposed to cancer, but they are not. And another paradox, the pulsus paradox. Sometimes it's possible to hear with a stethoscope heartbeats that can't be felt at the wrist. They can't be felt at the wrist. In chemistry, Faraday paradox, electrochemistry. Diluted nitric acid will corrode steel, while concentrated nitric acid does not corrode steel. Strange. The grandfather paradox, you must have seen the movie Escape to the Future, Steven Spielberg. You travel back in time and kill your grandfather before he conceives one of your parents, which precludes your own conception, and therefore you couldn't go back in time and kill your grandfather. So, Escape to the Future, a film by Steven Spielberg. So, this is the science fiction temporal paradox. What happens when a time traveler does things in the past that prevent him from doing them in the first place? And the paradox of free will: if God knew how we will decide when He created us, how can there be free will? If God knew how we will decide when He created us, how can there be free will? Well, that's why in Hinduism God does not create us. The Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas is very clear. Prakrutim Purusham Chaiva Vidya Anadi Ubhavapi. The three eternal verities are the Jivatma, Paramatma and Prakriti. God did not create us. We are eternal companions. So, the rishis have understood that this kind of a fallacy will be cropping up, and therefore the truth is beyond this. The paradox of hedonism: if in seeking happiness one does not find happiness. The omnipotence paradox: can an omnipotent being create another omnipotent being, or somebody more omnipotent than himself, or a rock too heavy for himself to lift or herself to lift? And theodicy is a branch of religion, you say, which is the explanation people try to give for the presence of evil. Theodicy. Now, the problem of evil: the existence of evil seems to be incompatible with the existence of an omnipotent, omniscient and omnibenevolent, morally perfect God. So how do you explain that? They struggle a lot. So the presence of evil cannot be explained. That's a serious paradox. And Bertrand paradox, the Nash equilibrium. Two players reaching a state of Nash equilibrium both find themselves with no profits. So that's an interesting thing in the XY game. If we play, you will understand that. The prisoner's dilemma is related to that. And a very simple one is diamond water paradox, the paradox of value. Water is more useful than diamonds, yet it is a lot cheaper. Why? And the Easterlin paradox: for countries with income sufficient to meet basic needs, the reported level of happiness does not correlate with national income per person. So there's no correlation between the level of happiness and income. That is why both capitalism and communism are wrong, because the fundamental premise of both capitalism and communism is that wealth will solve all problems. Whereas in Hinduism we believe in Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So wealth cannot solve all the problems. The Icarus paradox: some businesses bring about their own downfall through their own successes. Well, I think that is explainable. Now, this Mandy-Wheels paradox: actions that may be vicious to individuals may benefit society as a whole. Utilitarianism. The paradox of thrift is another one widely known. If everyone saves money during times of recession, the aggregate demand will fall and will in turn lower total savings in the population. Service recovery paradox is a very interesting one. Successfully fixing a problem with a defective product will lead to higher consumer satisfaction than in the case where no problem occurred at all. The stability instability paradox: when two countries each have nuclear weapons, the probability of a direct war between them greatly decreases, but the probability of minor proxy conflicts between them increases. And to conclude the entire discussion, Hegel said, "We learn from history that we do not learn from history." Jai Shri Ram.